With the most recent update, that being patch 13 for Fallout 76, we saw the end of the summer DLC. Bethesda dubbed this Nuclear Winter. It was the second major DLC wave for this game, and in this video I want to do a couple of things, answer a few questions. First and foremost, I'll give you a brief overview of what this DLC entailed. Maybe you haven't been following the progress of the game too closely, but even further, of course, actually give my overview and review of the DLC and answer the long-asked question, is Fallout 76 good now? As eventually the answer has to be yes, right? And also this game has just been out for 10 months as of today, so I'll give you a bit of an overview as to where it stands right now. But first, let's actually look at what the new DLC was. This was all kicked off by the release of the Battle Royale mode, that known as Nuclear Winter. Nuclear Winter was also just the name of the DLC wave overall, and since then some of the additions have been a new map for this mode, some other updates like a choose your own perk card system for the Battle Royale mode, but this new mode and all the additional things it adds in was without a doubt the largest addition with this DLC. Outside of that though, for players that don't like PvP combat, there were some other things also. We got another seasonal event in August that known as Meat Week. This was only a limited time event, so it's not like you could play it anymore, but something that was a bit more permanent was the addition of Vault 94. This was the other pretty major addition with this DLC wave. Vault 94 added in a new instance dungeon that you and some other players could complete as a team, and it was meant to be the first really true endgame content that would come in the way of Fallout 76 DLC. And outside of that, there were a couple of other more minor things. Display cases were added to the game, the event system got a bit of an overhaul, and of course the fairly typical balance or stability changes. As far as the size of this DLC, it was significantly smaller compared to the previous one. Wild Appalachia was Fallout 76's first DLC and it had way more of a story focus and just a lot more content overall. Although the Nuclear Winter mode definitely is pretty big, I mean it's a totally new game mode, a totally new way to experience this game. For me at least personally, I definitely put more hours into the first DLC, but that's not to say what we got this time around was bad. Taking a look first at the Battle Royale mode, this was actually really unique for Fallout 76 in that it released pretty much bug-free. If you're not familiar, Fallout 76 is developed by Bethesda Game Studios Austin, but the Battle Royale mode is actually developed and maintained by Bethesda Game Studios Dallas. Judging by the bug-free release of this particular mode, which was a pretty stark contrast to the typical updates that contain a bug here or there for the rest of the game, this was really refreshing and the quality was definitely there. Everything about the mode is pretty good. It's interesting, refreshing, a change up on the Battle Royale formula while still kind of being similar to the others. The new map is awesome, it's a great addition to the game, but I think one of the major problems with this mode was it was almost like a neglected child. Even though the initial release was pretty good, there definitely were some things that needed to be nerfed or buffed, some things that were just a little too overpowered, and a couple of bugs that were lingering, but as weeks went on, those updates just didn't come. Some of those overpowered weapons stayed overpowered for a while, leading a lot of people to start abandoning this mode out of just pure frustration. Even further, the whole perk card unlock system being totally randomized was really frustrating. There are some really powerful must-take perk cards, but the way you got them was random, so sometimes even if you were a high level, you didn't have them, which put you at a decent sized disadvantage. We did finally get the choose your own perk card system, which is a great improvement on it, but it took 2 months for that update to get released, meaning that a lot of people quit out of frustration before then. As far as new content for the mode goes, that took a full 3 months to finally get the new map. The new map is really good. It's distinctively different than the original one. It added in a couple of new creatures, a couple of new weapons, these being things already in the base game of Fallout 76 but weren't present in the Battle Royale. The new map is a lot more built up and urban, while the older one's a little bit more spread out, making it so when you play one versus the other, you could really tell. All these additions were great, it just feels like it took too long and it made it so the player base really started to leave. A couple of weeks before this most recent update, I spent an hour waiting to find a match for the Battle Royale mode, which obviously isn't ideal. It's a mode meant to be played by 52 players, and if you manage to get 40 to 50 players, it is a lot of fun. When you're in a server of only 20, you really start to notice it. It slows the pace down quite a bit. Fortunately, following this most recent update, there's quite a bit of additional interest in it. They made it so now these servers are all international, so connect to people in different countries, not just your own. Not the most ideal solution, but a solution nonetheless. But even still, you rarely get server sizes of over 40 players, and you could definitely tell. For me at least, I find the Battle Royale mode weird in that it's actually pretty good. All of the content itself is pretty solid, but there's certainly still a player count issue, and it just feels like it didn't get the love it needed fast enough, leading to a lot of that player abandonment. I still find myself having a lot of fun in this, especially when you get a good group of people playing through it. On weekends, it is easy to find servers, servers, it's just rarely will those servers ever be over 40 players. But switching over to that PvE content, as I mentioned first, one of the major things we got was the seasonal event known as Meat Week. Although this is gone now, it definitely was fun while it lasted. The seasonal events on paper are pretty tedious. It's really just doing some mundane task. What makes it so fun is the community experience in Fallout 76. You're doing this with a ton of other players, and it's cool seeing that many people in one spot, interacting, communicating, working together. This was definitely a win for Bethesda. I think the rewards could have definitely been improved, but we know that more of these are planned, and I'm happy to hear that. As far as more permanent content goes, we also did again get those Vault 94 raids. This is another one that's really hit and miss. Basically, the way the Vault 94 raids go is there's 3 different missions that go in rotation. So for this week, it'll be one mission, then on Tuesday, it'll switch to the second one, then the next Tuesday onto the third, and then so on and so forth. These are promised to be late game content, and they definitely were. These were extremely tough events that if you were a casual player, you would have to do with a team of high level players. You could do them on the easiest difficulty where there's no time limits, or the standard or expert difficulties where there are time limits, on expert actually being pretty hard to beat. Even if you are coordinated, it won't guarantee a successful run. Part of the frustration for these for a lot of people were they were actually pretty puzzle based. The second one to release in particular was just ridiculously tedious. You were just finding these little red key cards, and it got really tiring to do that for like an hour or so. The first Vault raid was more in the middle. It had some definite fun parts, but it also had a room that got pretty tedious again, but just not nearly as bad. The third one overall, I would say, was a lot of fun. It's definitely the easiest, and it's not nearly as tedious or puzzle based as some of the previous. And in general, I would say the Vault raids are a good addition. It was something unique in that it was a real resource dump. So I found myself, after completing it, using a ton of ammo and stim packs, going to some of those player-made shops that were added earlier this year. It was the first time a piece of content had come out for this game, and I actually had to worry about what my build was, what weapons I was using. It wasn't promised late game content that in reality you could easily clear through on your own. This was genuinely difficult, and I enjoyed the challenge. The problem was I enjoyed the challenge that was meant to be there, but with these Vault raids, there was also a lot of challenges that weren't intended. If you die in the Vault raid or exit the Vault raid, you're out. You're leaving your team members there to fend for themselves. The big problem being, Fallout 76 has a lot of crashing issues. Consistently, while playing these Vault raids, someone will crash out and then they're just gone. You have to restart if you want to add them back onto the mission, meaning you could lose a lot of progress, like 45 minutes of progress. Even further, server instability proved to be a major hurdle here. To earn the good rewards from these, you had to do the timed version. Sometimes it would take 20 seconds for a terminal to load just because the server was lagging on the back end. Naturally, when you're on a time crunch, that's really frustrating. So even though I would say the Vault raids, large in part, especially the first and third mission, were fun and good additions to the game, the server instability made it so they were just way too frustrating to complete for a lot of people, making them a pretty big turnoff. There was actually a strategy a lot of people used that they would go on the otherwise dead survival servers to complete these because it was just way more stable, and the players having to find workarounds to make this kind of content work is just not how you want to integrate it. One of the other fairly big problems with the Vault raids was, although it was a massive resource dump, the rewards weren't super great. You could get these unique power armors and armors that did have unique effects on them, so it would give you a stat bonus in that you couldn't get otherwise. It also gave you guaranteed legendary spawns, which not many places did, at least not 3-star legendaries, but again, you were using thousands of rounds of ammo, potentially hundreds of stim packs depending on your build. Even though some of that stuff was very powerful, it actually took quite a while to get some of it. You would earn the plan, then you'd have to get all the materials by completing this mode subsequent times to actually build the entire armor piece, and then you'd have to do it for all of the armor pieces if you wanted the bonus. It's a considerable investment to get some of that content, and I think for a lot of people it just wasn't worth it. But with the Vault raids in particular, I think it's a concept that has a lot of promise that definitely deserves a spot in this game, and hopefully we see improvements to in the future. We know Vault 96 is coming at some point, and I think they can learn a lot from the feedback on the first one and hopefully make some stability improvements to make them more playable. Outside of that, we also got some other minor balance changes or bug fixes to the game. Display cases were the only real other content addition we did see. These were long awaited and definitely are a cool addition. You can now show off some magazines, bobbleheads, weapons, or other things in your camp, although even this kind of came with a bit of a caveat. Bethesda has been consistently adding new things for you to build in your camps, but the camp budget, how much stuff you could actually place down, hasn't gotten raised. And this is actually exaggerating frustrated with display cases because actually placing down the display case itself uses camp budget, but also each item you display within that display case also will eat up some camp budget, making these pretty expensive to what is otherwise a fairly scarce resource. But again, it's a nice addition, and for someone like me that isn't super focused on camp building, it's an easy thing to place down and maybe show off a couple of rare items I have. I actually think a really nice addition would be with some of the legendary items in the game to display what kind of legendary effects they have so you can see some of that super rare stuff, as those tend to be some of the most sought after things in the game right now. One of the other newer additions were event system improvements. In the grand scheme of things, these are kind of minor. Basically, what it's going to do is make it so the events in the game are a little bit more profound. If it's a public event, you'll probably know what's going on and find more people there. This is a cool addition in the sense that it ups the community aspect of the game. You'll go to an event, find some other players, and potentially even meet some other players if you're active with talking. For new players or people just getting into the game, I would say this is definitely a great addition, but if you were someone who was grinding out events previously, due to the way these changes impacted the game, it actually made it so certain events are significantly rarer. Some people really liked server hopping to complete one specific event, and you really can't do that easily anymore. It'll just take a really long time to find it. Some people even calling for a revert of this change. I still think overall it's a good one, but it's really more of a repackaging of some of the old content. I would say the big benefit making it a lot more fun and accessible for newer players or people that aren't just trying to do the grind. And if it wasn't clear from the rest of this video, I would say something that became pretty evident was there just wasn't a ton of new content over these past few months with this DLC wave, and what new content we did get was a bit alienating. Even though I like the PvP mode, a lot of Fallout players don't like PvP. Every previous Fallout game has been single player. There literally isn't PvP. So even though this mode is pretty cool, in my eyes, it doesn't necessarily cater to the existing audience. The vault raids again being kind of cool, but a little bit too frustrating for a lot of people due to the server instability and just additional added stress of completing these due to the servers. And even though the mission rotation system is cool, actually all 3 missions together tell a bit of a story as to what happened to the interior of the vault, I think there definitely should be the option to pick which mission you want to do, because some of them just kind of suck. The second mission in particular just isn't fun. But also overall, I feel like what this DLC wave didn't do was hit the mark on what people really want, and that is new and interesting story content. The first DLC wave I think was way more popular, way more well received because it had story content. I still didn't love the way in which that story was told, but a lot of people are playing this game and played this entire franchise because they like the story. They like the storytelling. It seems like with Wastelanders we're going back to that, and hopefully back to that in a major way, but the Nuclear Winter updates overall just felt more like kind of a filler. Like they felt like they had to add something to the game, and they tried a couple of new and interesting things, but they never really landed. And to me at least, playing the game, it seems like player morale as well as just the all-around player base is lower than it ever has been before. All throughout these updates there's also been persistent bugs that have gone unfixed that have been plaguing the game. One power armor bug in particular is pretty game breaking, and it's been there for over a month now. Bethesda is aware of this, trying to fix it, but that is a long time to have a fairly game breaking bug be present. Now to be clear with this, the game still got a lot of bug fixes. We saw several quality of life changes, bug fixes, and a lot of problems were resolved. But in a way, the irony of this is, with some of the new content additions in the form of vault raids, some of the major bugs became even more apparent. Now if you crash, you lose a ton of progress, where in the main game, if you crash, you just relog back in and you're fine. The server instability, rather than just being a minor nuisance that made things go a bit slower, ended up costing you time in a mode that was time sensitive. If you look at the bugginess of the game before the Nuclear Winter DLC and after, it certainly has improved. There are less bugs overall, but I think in between the vault raids making bugs more apparent, as well as just the fatigue of some of these bugs lingering on, or the game still not being bug free, has made users a little bit more frustrated. Now when an update adds in a couple of new bugs, since it's happened 14 times already, it's like, come on, really? We're still doing this thing? While in the past, people are more patient or hopeful with Bethesda. A lot of that goodwill is starting to dry up, and I think you're seeing that now based on some of these recent additions. And as far as the answer to that question, is Fallout 76 good now? It's kind of a weird one. I wouldn't say it's good per se, but also I would say even though we got a ton of updates, a ton of DLC, it's not like the game is in a much better state than it was 3-4 months ago at the end of the past DLC wave. The first DLC wave was pretty good. This one just wasn't. It was mediocre, a mixed bag. It felt like a lot more often when something good was added, there was a negative side to it also. Fallout 76 still has a lot of great content. If you've never played the game to begin with, I would recommend giving it a try. You can find it pretty deeply discounted these days, but unless you're a really big fan of Battle Royale, it's not like there's a ton of new content that was just added that you should try out. I would recommend actually playing some of the older content that has been there for a while. Overall, I would say the Nuclear Winter DLC wave for Fallout 76 was kind of just neutral. I wouldn't say it destroyed the game or made it horrible, but I don't think it made the game great again or made it super good where before it was bad. And I would say one of the reasons that's a problem is I think Bethesda and Fallout 76 needed some wins with this DLC wave, but they didn't really get them. I think that is why so many players have been turning away or just biding time for the next major update with Wastelanders. And even though if you're somebody who never picked up Fallout 76 and is hearing this, you might see that as a very bad sign and just not want to jump into the game, I think it's more that the existing users have been there since launch and really just burnt through some of that existing content. They played everything there was to play, and even though I would argue a lot of the existing stuff is a lot of fun, not all of that came out this summer. Actually, very little of it came out this summer. Over the next few weeks, there is still some stuff going on with the game. Project Clean Appalachia is going on, which is basically kill a bunch of Scorch Beasts as a community and you'll get some rewards as a community. It's cool, but it's not really new content or DLC per se. So yeah, those are my thoughts and my review of Fallout 76's summer DLC. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think about this? Did you start playing the game during this phase? Did you start replaying the game for some of these updates? And what do you think? Did you enjoy the updates? Did it get you playing more regularly? Do you like the Battle Royale mode? Either way, with all of that being said, as always again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.